Hello, everyone. Hello. Say hello back.
Hello.
All right, cool. It's silly, but it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. So thank you all for showing up for the second panel of the Drag and Spirituality Summit, Kings, Queens, and Things in Drag. I'm going to go ahead and invite our panelists up. Our moderator, Christopher Belmont. Panelist Firestorm.
Bravo, bravo.
Yes. And King Julez.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kings, and Quings. I don't know how to say that word, I'm sorry. But welcome to our, more easy to say, alternative drag panel at the Drag and Spirituality Summit. Oh my gosh. We are so excited to talk to you guys. As you can see, we are all dressed to the nines for the event, and we're very, very excited to talk to you guys. To start, we're going to do a little bit more introducing ourselves. We're going to say our name, our pronouns, and a little bit about the kind of drag we do. So, my name is Christopher Belmont, as you previously heard. I use it, he, and she pronouns. And I would describe my drag as a hypersexualized, silly little clown guy who just wants to make everyone smile. And
hi, I'm Firestorm. My pronouns are he, they, and I would describe my drag as a mix between early rock god mixed with the 2000s emo punk phase.
We got it. Hi, my name is King Julez. I use they, them pronouns. My drag fluctuates and changes with how the spirit guides me, but I definitely identify as a drag clown and take influence from the history of clowns and court jesters, as well as the king community. So sort of a blend of things that mean a lot to me.
And just before we get into our discussion, I want to give a huge shout out to our lovely ASL interpreter, Hani. She's doing a great job, doing amazing for us. I really appreciate her. And I also want to shout out a few people who I am going to be quoting during the night. I was able to have some interviews, some little discussions with some people in the alternative drag community. So I want to give a huge shout out to people who chatted with me, like Luca Me, a Chicago legend. Monsieur Bombastic. I also spoke to the lovely Garlic, as well as an I believe they're in Rhode Island, who mostly does digital drag. Their name is Frankie404. And I also spoke to a lovely person from Arizona, one of my biggest clown inspirations, Yuri Thrall. So thank you to everybody who's helped out. Thank you to Bonnie Violet for doing this lovely summit. You all are amazing, and thank you all for being here. So we're going to talk a little bit about some different aspects of alternative drag. We phrased it today as the good, the bad, and the hopeful. So we're going to start with the good, the great things about being an alternative drag artist. So I just want to pass it over to you guys. What's your favorite thing about being a drag performer? What really pulls you in to keep doing this over and over again and find bookings and do the makeup and put on the lashes and the 12-inch platforms?
I need 12-inch platforms. Unfortunately, these are 2 inches short. So these are like my casual shoes.
Those are going the Starbucks shoes.
Yeah, these are where I grab that pumpkin spice cold brew.
Go to the grocery store.
Yeah, it's so I can reach the things for the little old ladies that pop in and they always want to start a conversation with me, and I'm not opposed. I love little old ladies. It's just always me though, which is interesting. One of the main reasons I love doing drag is when I was a kid, I was very artistic. My parents put me into dance school. I've been a vocalist since I was very, very young and classically trained. And what's really nice is being a drag performer not only let me discover more about my gender identity, but it let me showcase talents I already had in a light that I didn't know was out there. Because I didn't grow up knowing that drag was anything other than drag queens. And growing up in a small suburb where I knew the only two maybe gay kids who were not even out, even if it was obvious. So it's just, I love doing this because I've also seen me being that inspiration for someone else. My my biggest fan in drag to me is there is a little they them from Belmont, Ohio, which most people wouldn't necessarily know, but like they came out for me and that made so much. I'm like the background of their phone because we took the world's cutest picture, and I like every time I look at it, like I will cry off my makeup right now, so I can't. But you know, it's nice because I didn't have that inspiration, and I want to be the inspiration that I would have wanted to have when I was young.
Oh, I love that so much. It's all for the kids. It's all for the youth. I started doing drag and ended up finding myself in a way that I didn't know that I could. I credit the drag scene in Toronto, which is where I currently live, for showing me so many different kinds of drag and burlesque and queer performance. And I tested the waters in so many open stages and got to see so many people. And through my drag, I started my transition. Through my drag, I, like you were saying, got to showcase talents that I have had for a very long time. I was a band and choir kid in high school, so you can imagine I love being in front of people and showing what I can do. I have also recently started preaching in drag and doing my church leadership in drag, which really means a lot to me. I was called to ordination as a child. Someone mentioned, Nancy Nogood mentioned earlier that she wanted to be a priest at about 8. I can really relate to that. And I'm still on that path. I'm in seminary and I'm bringing my drag there. And I am leading worships at my college in drag and leading worships at my church in drag. And it for me, it's about fully embodying my whole self and also, you know, giving a nod to the legacy that drag performers hold. You know, they were the ones that fought for our rights and gave us what we have. And also in history, clowns and jesters were the ones that were truth tellers, right? They were storytellers. They were the ones that poked fun at the systems of power and made difficult things easier to hear. And I think that's a lot about what religious and spiritual leadership is about as well. So for me, they go hand in hand. And bringing my drag into my religious and spiritual leadership has just deepened my own faith and had a lot more fun.
That sounds really beautiful. I actually grew up in a very sort of progressive. I grew up Unitarian Universalist, and my church was always very progressive. We would have drag bingos. That was where I first saw drag performers, and especially as another clown, I love how you speak on clowns being truth tellers. Like back in the day, they were the ones who were allowed to make fun of the king. Like they were the only ones in the entire country allowed to make fun of the kings. I think you both had such beautiful thoughts. I think that exploring our spirituality and our gender identity through drag is very important. A lot of the people I spoke to talked about this idea of gender liberation. Monsieur Bombastic, who's a lovely, lovely clown in Chicago. I got to see him at a show called Queeried. Just incredible. But he talked about this idea of being able to express things that as a transmasculine individual, it can be very difficult to express in day-to-day life. And being able to do that through drag was very liberating and very important for him. And I think that's so beautiful. I know for me, every time I get on stage, I truly feel like I'm just in the place I was meant to be. When I'm making people happy and I'm making people dance and party to a Big Time Rush song, I'm like, yes, this is where I belong. This is it.
I'm not the Big Time Rush.
Oh my gosh, you know I'm looking for a boyfriend. You're looking for a boyfriend. I see that. Give me time. You know I'm gonna be there. Don't be scared to come. Put your trust in me.
It's gonna be stuck in my head all day now.
I heard the boop, and I was like, oh no, I got it too.
You get it. What do you think is something that has really what is an experience you had? I know you talked about the experience with the little they them and being their phone background, but maybe for you, Julez, what's a specific experience you had that really how do I say this, really put down your foundation of just loving drag and loving doing drag?
Oh, that's such a good question.
I'm a good moderator.
I love drag for so many reasons, and again, the community in Toronto has given me so much, has filled my cup, has taught me so many things. I think for me, one of my first ever performances in drag, I did a strip number at this little bar in Toronto called the Beaver, which is now closed. And it was insane because I had just started my transition and nothing had, happened physically yet. So I was still feeling a lot of that discomfort and dysphoria, and I still decided to do a strip number with band-aids over my nipples and underwear. It was the final final finish. And who was sitting front row but my minister at the time with her husband with a little glass of wine. And then we went to church a couple days later and I helped teach Sunday school. And it was one of those moments that I felt so cared for, not only by the drag performers that were hosting this, drag babies competition, but also by my spiritual and religious community, and in a way that I never would have expected. Because am I going to do a strip number at the front of the church? Probably not. But to have such an important person to me be there and support me like that really drove me a lot. And I've had a lot of experiences after that, very similar, and much like you, experiences with youth and youth coming out, and children I've taught Sunday school to, or children who have been in my youth groups. It's such a powerful thing, and yeah, that's not directly related to the drag itself, but more my experience of the drag and my drag and the evolution of it. So
I think that's so beautiful. I truly love your connection to both like drag and the church. I think it's such a lovely thing. In the previous panel that just happened, Drag as Spiritual Healing, really lovely and beautiful conversations about like the ideas of like bringing drag into the church and bringing this idea of like, this is a good thing, this is important to teach people. I think that's so lovely. Really just beautiful. I love you guys.
Plus, wouldn't you love to hear a clown talk about Jesus? Like,
right.
Come on.
I'm pretty sure that's just what we called our youth pastor. No, he was great. Actually, I loved my my youth pastors and my teen pastors in the church that I grew up in. They were there like what everybody says the stigma is, like they wore jeans to church and like open-toed sandals, and they were one with the kids. And honestly, they were good at it. And I was just like, were they as cool as they thought they were? Probably not, but we were nice enough not to tell them.
You gotta let them live the fantasy, just like we live the fantasy.
Right, they were living their own version of drag.
So for a little bit, we are gonna maybe turn down the mood a little bit, like get the dial down just a touch. But I do want to make sure we highlight something that is really difficult for alternate drag performers, which is a lot of things. So I want to ask you guys, is there any specific experience you've had in drag, or general? You don't have to get, I don't want you to have to unpack your trauma on stage. That, like, the lights are very bright. It's not a great therapy room. But is that, like, what do you think you've struggled with as an alternative drag performer? What do you think is maybe frustrating or difficult about getting out there or anything like that?
I think one of the hardest things is when I started in drag, like the first time I ever went and did drag, it was just kind of like for fun. Got on stage a couple of times and then COVID hit, and then like didn't come back until 2 years ago, December. And it was mostly queens. I mostly saw queens and loved them. And my drag mom is a gorgeous queen, pageant queen.
Who's your drag mom?
My drag mom is Sabrina Caprice Hart, and my other drag mommy is Mary Jane. They're both from Ohio.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. We love little drag families.
They are the best. Of course, being with two lesbians, that's how I turned into a king. So it all makes sense. It really does.
It's a pipeline.
Oh yeah. But they gave me the realities early before I felt it, which stinks, but it did prepare me better. They were like, people don't see kings or alternative artists as maybe as hardworking or as polished. And so it was just like having to prove people wrong that don't see a certain set of talent, because you can agree that there are probably not good performers in certain areas, people who have not put that passion in that some of us have. So if that's all you see, I'm not mad at that person for feeling that way. I just want them to give me that chance to be like, I know you probably don't think I'm at the caliber that you think I should be for your shows, but if you give me that chance, I will prove that and so much more.
Yes. Giving people the chance is really important. I think that not every time, but I do think in my experience, sometimes I will do a show where maybe I'm not expecting that the audience will really like love what I'm doing. But then like someone will come up to me after the show and that I like literally just looks like white twink number 42 or something like that. And they like come up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I love that. Like you were incredible. You blew me away. Like this and that. And it really reminds me to keep trying shows and keep trying to push to get bookings and stuff like that, because you never know who's going to end up falling in love with drag. And I talk a lot about this idea of like, if you show people what you're doing, they never know if they're going to like it until they see it.
And that's what any sort of performance is like. You can go and do something and people will sometimes like it just because it is different. Like if you're doing a reboot show and everybody is doing some sort of like personality where they're impersonating someone, and it's like Cher, Lady Gaga, you know, some of the Golden Girls, you know, and they're doing that, and then I'll come out here as, I don't know, goth Freddie Mercury, and
I need to see that though.
oh well, later tonight there will be an opportunity.
Oh my gosh, Dragon Spirituality Summit show tonight at 7 p.m.
Small plug. But you know, I won't look like the other performers, but sometimes that's what people are excited for. They're like, oh, that's a wild card. I haven't seen that yet.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that. I mean, I know when I'm looking for something to do in the evening and I see a lineup of shows, I'm definitely drawn to the ones that have drag kings or drag clowns or drag things or horror performers or et cetera, you know. You're absolutely right. Something that I find really difficult, and I know is it's something that we're facing in Toronto, and maybe you face in your locations as well, is a lot of sexism and a lot of assumption that cis gay men dressing up as women is what drag is. And there's this expectation almost that that's who is going to show up. And there's been instances where myself or performers who identify similarly to me or who are physically similar to me don't get let into bars or get turned away at the door. Or, you know, there was one time that I was going up to an establishment with a group of performers and we all were walking in and nobody was showing their ID. We were all of age though. None of my other performer friends showed their ID. They got let in. I got stopped at the door. Again, I'm covered in tattoos and piercings and all of this. I got stopped at the door and was told I couldn't come in because I didn't have my ID with me, which I guess is standard bar practice, but it was strange that, you know, the 6 or 7 cis gay men dressed up as women in front of me got let in no problem, and I got stopped at the door and turned away. So it's something that happens in our community quite often to drag kings and kings and queens and those of us that are not cis men dressing up as women. It's really, really difficult. And in addition to that, there's these expectations that, you know, if you have a chest, you're gonna bind, right? If you are a drag king, you're gonna pack to make it look like you have a peen, right? There's all of these expectations of performers that are not queens that really also limit sort of how people perceive us or how people look at us even, alongside everything that you said. You hit a lot of nails on the head with what you said too.
Yeah, I want to, so in my interviews, I spoke to a very lovely drag deity from Chicago named Lukami, and Lukami is an incredible champion of alternative performers, of inclusion in drag. I'm gonna cry like just talking about them because like truly one of my favorite people in Chicago. But they had a really lovely quote on this that I just want to read. It's a little long, but I think you will understand why I want to say all this. But although drag has always been a counterculture, I do think the capitalization of drag has been a double-edged sword. Yes, people should get paid for their art, but it's also often normalized to book what's familiar in drag, or rather than things that are pushing the boundaries. I also feel that the drag community has a lot of internalized homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, ableism, fat phobia, racism that has been absorbed through society and not necessarily unpacked enough. Drag can be a great way to comment and respond on these issues, but also a lot of people haven't unpacked their personal traumas about these things, and as a result, these come out in how people make book, shows, or interact with shows. Wherever money and people's feelings are involved, it always can be messy. Art making is such a vulnerable process, no matter who you are, that it can make it really difficult to navigate both success in drag as well as caring for your mental and physical health. And that just really spoke to me because like there's so many different internalized or externalized biases that we're experiencing as we're walking through the world and as we're intaking the world. And drag is full of so many gosh darn people that you never know what they're going through, you never know what they're experiencing, and you never know what they're holding within them. And even just in caring for yourself, like I know sometimes I come home after a show, I'm bruised, I'm tired, my back hurts, and I'm like, all right, let's go out tomorrow. Let's go, girls, it's time. And I think that we, as any performer, whether you're an alternative artist or you're a drag queen, I think that being able to care for yourself and for the people around you is really, really important in the drag scene. And I don't know if we necessarily see as much like cares, like not like I don't know if you have to set up like a full care station in a bar, but I think it would be nice to maybe recognize that sometimes people need a little space to calm down. Maybe people need a space to relax. They need a drink of water. They need to step outside for a sec. And I think that caring for yourself in the drag community is just as important as making sure you're including people. Like making sure you're including people and including them safely, respectfully, and positively. And you're not choosing one over the other based on some silly thing that you thought about 5 years ago.
And that really touches on accessibility needs too, right? I'm thinking about, performers that wear flat shoes due to their physical needs. How many times, maybe you all can raise a hand, how many times have you heard somebody, talk badly about a performer that's not wearing heels, right? A lot of us have, but that's a need that a lot of us have too. And it's one of those things, like you said, taking care of yourself is so important, especially with the art, but also, again, acknowledging that people have different needs and art looks different for every single person that's doing it.
Nobody's sitting here saying, why isn't Picasso painting like Van Gogh? That would be so much better. It would be better if everyone just painted like Van Gogh. No, it wouldn't. The art museums would be boring. Admit it.
It wouldn't be a museum, it'd be a single person gallery. And,
right.
Those are going over so well.
Right. One of the other performers I spoke to, Frankie 404, also spoke to the idea of like, even in a world where we are sort of moving out of the pandemic era, however well we're doing that or not, as we're moving out of that era, still being able to highlight digital drag and being able to highlight people who are performing online, because some people just can't access like bars as a space. Some people can't access large busy shows or festivals as a space, and being able to say, no, we still want to support online drag shows, we still want to live stream our drag shows, we still want to find ways to make sure people can be included even virtually. Like, I love that this is live streamed right now. We got our ASL interpretation up on the live stream too. Hey everybody, it makes me so happy. I have friends literally like messaging me right now like, oh my gosh, we're in the chat, I'm so excited. And it makes me happy when we can see these sort of developments happening and still being able to find inclusion. Which leads really nicely into my favorite segment of the night. We're going to talk about the hopeful. What do you see changing positively? What makes you excited to keep going out? What is the reason that you haven't thrown in the towel and said, we'll never make it as kings? What do you see changing that makes you really excited for the future of your drag?
I think the most exciting thing, and like it's gonna sound weird because I'm gonna start it with like I just drove here from Columbus, Ohio. Go Ohio. I'm not doing the thing though. I didn't go to school there. We're not doing the thing.
I don't know about the thing. What is?
Oh, you're from Canada. So
Canada, you don't know our culture. You're from Canada.
OSU is kind of like a mega college, and so in Ohio, everybody goes OH.
Ohio.
My partner over there. I'm ready. But if you're from Ohio, and it doesn't matter what state you're in, I've done this on a cruise ship to the Bahamas. I have done this in Europe. If you see someone who's from Ohio and you yell out OH, they will yell out IO. Interesting. That's the whole Ohio. That's not what I'm hopeful for. But when
I'm not hopeful for Ohio.
I am. I live there. Go Midwest. But I left, and there's a lot of, there is a lot of negativity going on right now. There's just a lot of issues between he said, she said, things about people's past that like maybe, were not things that people would be acceptable about. And just like, even though all that's happening, I still see glimmers of like a lot of the people I hold dear who are like, hug somebody you care about today, or checking in on your other performers. And like, there's a lot of new drag coming to where I'm at. I mean, when I first got on the scene, I knew like 3 drag kings, right? That was like it. There was more, but they were all around Ohio. And now there are like 6 or 7 amazing new drag king performers that I admire so much. And it's nice because they ask questions, they want to be better, and people are so encouraging. And it's not all about just booking the same people that have always been booked. I do see a lot of people that are giving these newcomers a chance, because I wouldn't be here without a drag queen on her day off just so happened to be out at an open stage. That was a competition, and after my first number, she was like, oh, you have to win. And basically went and yelled at all her gays, and they were like, we don't clap for anyone but this performer. I will cut off all of yours.
And we love that queen. We love that queen so much.
Abortia, I gotta shout you out, because you were the first person to really put a vote in for me. And Brian Richardson was there, and basically you guys were like, we are dead silent until this king is announced. And they were, and that really started me on my path. And ever since then, I've just had a lot of positive influences from people that I very much look up to, and to know that like with this new generation that they are just as accepting as I am, it's a really heartwarming experience.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm gonna share 2 hopes, if that's okay. One for our drag community and one for my church work. The drag community in Toronto has so many opportunities for new performers, kind of like you were talking about, open stages, but there's also king-specific shows. There's a series of shows called Kings and Classics that's been going on for years. There used to be, what was it called? I can't remember, but there was a drag king open stage every Wednesday, and there are the beginnings of drag kings getting booked at these, big bars along, it's called Church Street in Toronto, is our gay village. And it's so hopeful. It's so hopeful, and it's so fun to see Toronto kings and queens and horror performers and all of these other alternative performers have that space. At Toronto Pride this year, there was a show downtown in our big square by the mall, and it was called Alterna Queer. And all of the performers there were alternative in one form or another, and it was so incredible to have thousands of people standing there watching these people do their art. And it gave me so much hope that that there's going to be so much more space, and Dragula has really been helpful for that. In my church world, I'm a part of the United Church of Canada, and doing my drag there has brought me a lot of hope because, you know, I did a drag show this year for Easter, and we called it Jesus Coming Out. You know, this whole story of Easter in a Christian context is, you know, Jesus kind of comes into and says, yes, it's me, I'm the Messiah, faces, you know, persecution. One of his friends, Julez.
Wait, did he transition in that cave? Oh my god.
One of Judas turns him in, he gets killed, and the story is living into this purpose of resurrection. And we drew a parallel, you know, queer folks, we come out, we embrace who we are. Often we face persecution, but once we face that, we realize we're living our truth, and we live what we're meant to be. And I've seen 2 or 3 other churches now holding drag shows as well, 2 or 3 United churches, and we're asking me for advice or connections to performers or things like that. And it's really beautiful, and it gives me a lot of hope for my church, that you know, we're trying. There's always work, but we're trying to embrace this and embrace different forms of art and queerness and embodiment of self. Some words from the earlier panel were liberation, authenticity, you know, all of that stuff, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I love hearing you guys speak about like what makes you hopeful. I'm born and raised in Chicago, but I started drag when I was living in a small town called Flagstaff, Arizona. And when I started drag there, I was the first drag king. I was the first one to debut on the stage. And by the time I left, the college had a drag club. The college was doing like drag shows to help support like progressive voting in Arizona. There were so many alternative performers coming up. There were so many people like starting out, and it really felt beautiful to like have that sense of like, I feel like I started something. But even more so, I think moving back to Chicago was probably the biggest hope for me, because like I think there is a certain bias in saying like, I do drag in Chicago, so I feel this way, because there is such a widespread amount of drag here, and it is such like a huge city for it. But that was so inspiring to me, like seeing people like Luke and me, and seeing people like Mr. Bombastic, seeing the lovely Carly Marks, who's in the audience, one of the most incredible performers I've ever seen. Literally, like the first time I saw her perform, I was like mesmerized, and my friend was like trying to talk to me about the performance, and I was like, no, I have to watch this. This is incredible. Like seeing people who are doing stuff different, who are doing it at such a high level and such a huge level of talent. It was almost better than feeling like, oh, I like just started this whole alternative performer thing, because it reminded me that there are people who came before me, and there are people who will come after me, but we've always been here. I know that's such a classical like queer statement about a lot of different things, but people who are doing weird stuff in drag or doing different stuff in drag have always been there. You can trace transmasculine people back to the early ballroom scene. Like, we are here. We exist, and you're not gonna get rid of us anytime soon. And that
drag kings at Stonewall. Right?
Exactly.
I can never say it properly. Stormy was with Marsha, and so
yeah, we've literally always existed here. There have always been alternative gender identities, alternative performers, people outside of the like white cis gay male perspective on queerness. And it makes me so happy that we get to highlight this. I was so honored to do this panel with you guys, because it's just something so important to talk about and to show. And I think even having this panel and having all you beautiful people in this room supporting us, I think that shows that something is changing and something is shifting. And I love that you shouted out Dragula. Like, oh my God. I don't mean to gush, but that show is so good. Like
Dragula, Call Me Mother, Legendary. There's a lot of queer entertainment that really highlights so many alternative art.
Right.
Just on Dragula, Landon cited, so they did an All King show in Columbus, which which they do all King shows. District West, if anybody knows who Virginia West is, an absolute delight, is the baby of Nina West. So, and they own a drag bar in Columbus, and it is probably one of the most inclusive. It's very cabaret style, and they do drag king shows. But there was a drag king show at another venue, and Landing Ciders was like the king. And so, you know, I paid all that money for like that meet and greet. I got into my best drag. I actually went as a satyr. I wish I was getting like hoof shoes, walking on my haunches, the horns, everything. And when they were like, "Oh my God, your makeup is so good," I died. I died right there. I
I was
said,
gonna say I would just
I was like,
Just down.
I met my actual gay Jesus. If you've ever seen him do his gay Jesus look, it is stunning. It is so sickening. And so like when it comes to like those alternative shows and like me looking into those things, like Dracula is one of those things that has really pushed alternative drag way to the forefront.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. If the Boulay brothers are watching, I'm like,
We love you.
we love you. We're like robots. We're like, we have to let them know.
We didn't plan this, I swear.
But yeah, there are some lovely like king focused shows in Chicago as well. If any of you guys are local or just around for a bit, Notes on Masculinity is coming up, which has like a really great cast this month. Boys to Men, which is a competition, I believe, they're gonna do a competition at Berlin, which is all kings. My lovely friend Lavender Maxine is gonna be in it. But there's so much beautiful stuff happening, and I do want to attribute that a lot to Dragula, but I also want to attribute that to people like you and people who are maybe out in the audience, maybe in the live stream, maybe getting in drag for the evening right now. I want to shout out every single person who is deciding to choose an alternate route for drag, because you, in making that choice, are a part of changing the conversation and the structure of how drag shows work and how drag shows happen. By making the choice to do the makeup you do, to wear the shoes you do, to be the person that you are, that is a radical act, and that's a really, really, really important act in the drag community. So like, thank you guys so much for doing what you do and doing it so well. You're so cool. Congratulations on existing and doing drag. I'm so proud of you.
right back at you, right back at you.
Thank you. So we are going to finish up in a little bit here, but if anyone has any questions, either in the live stream or in the audience, I would love to be able to chat with you guys. So any questions, any thoughts, comments, concerns? Compliments. If you think we're hot, please tell us.
Oh, that is such a king thing. I was like, please tell me I'm pretty.
Please.
Oh yes, you're all fabulous, handsome, gorgeous, all of the words. I mean, you took some time with the makeup and the outfits, so you got to get the compliments. So you all really inspired me with some of what you were sharing earlier regarding the concept of like the holy fool, the drag queen, the people who can tell the truth. And so I was curious if there was a moment that you might recall from your drag performing experience when you felt that you had told the truth, or a moment when someone reflected back to you, comfortably or uncomfortably, that you had told them a truth and they heard it.
That's a really cool question. Thank you for that one. I think that so I have a funky little number I do. I'm not going to get too much into it because you might see it tonight at the Dragon Spirituality Summit Drag Show at 7 p.m. at Broadway United Methodist Church. That was a plug. But I have a number I do where I start out in like a suit covered in like question marks and pronouns and stuff like that. And throughout the number, I slowly like rip that off and sort of remove those labels and that fear from my identity. And it ends in a secret reveal that you will see tonight at Broadway United Methodist Church at 7 p.m. Dragon Spirituality Summit Drag Show. But I think that doing that number and being able to share that unabashed trans joy was really important for me. I think that expressing the concept that like I can go through confusion and I can go through concerns about my gender, and I'm going through them right now. Someone made an assumption about my gender the other night, and I was like, well, you're not totally wrong, and it sent me into like a gender crisis for like 6 hours. So I'm not even done figuring that out. But I think that being able to express trans joy and trans love has been very like fulfilling and important for me. I think that trans people are such an important part of the drag community, and I think that being able to express, yes, I love my body, whether I'm wearing my binding tape, whether I'm wearing my packer, or whether I'm in the cutest little latex dress you've ever seen. I love my trans body, and I think that that's just such a beautiful, and for me, a very spiritual thing to express, because my spirit is my gender. Like, my spirit is my queerness, and I want to share that with everybody, and I want to share the truth and love that comes from that with everybody.
I think my biggest thing on that is, so I actually came out as trans during Pride Month this year in my home city.
Congratulations! We love it!
I had been talking about it for a while, and then it was like I wanted to make it a big thing. So I actually I made it so that I got booked, because I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, which is just like on the lake for people who like are bad at geography. Okay.
For the people from Canada.
For the people from Canada, we're up here. We're like right on this part. And I was performing at one of the oldest establishments in Cleveland that had been doing drag, and I actually sang a male rendition of "Rise Up" by Andre Day as my come out song, because I emanate with that so much. And my mom was there, and she cried, I cried, the whole front row cried. And it was really nice, because like I had a lot of people that came up to me and they said it was just very inspirational, and it really moved them in a way that they wanted to do something different with their life. And there was one person there that talked to me about drag king stuff, and he messaged me on Instagram. Next thing you know, I'm doing a show and he's doing drag for the first time. So
that's what you deserve.
That's great.
So good. I don't know my feels about that one. For me, I've been doing a lot of my drag recently when I'm guest preaching, when I'm leading worship in church, when I'm doing my sermons. And to me, that's a lot of telling truth about faith, telling truth about my connection to faith, how the people around me can connect to our faith, and how I know that it's what I'm supposed to be doing, how I know that it's a truthful engagement for me, is how I get ready for services. I read over my sermon, listen to the hymns maybe, and then I just go with whatever colors stand out to me. And it's a real guided by the Spirit sort of moment. And 3 or 4 different times now, I will be guest preaching somewhere, and I will choose my colors and do my face based on the words that I'm reading. And I'll show up to the church, and the colors that stood out to me are the colors that are in the sanctuary. So one time it was the colors in the stained glass window. One time it was, the carpet was the color of my lips, and the walls were the colors of my face. There's been moments like that, and I have to take a step back and stand in this moment that I obviously was guided to, and I obviously was brought there and doing what I'm meant to be doing and how I'm meant to be doing it. Yeah.
I love that so much. Wow, that was so beautiful. Thank you, guys. Wow. Do we have any more audience? Hello? Okay. Hi, from Pan Graham. Can you comment more on the differences you've observed on personal gender identity expressed between kings, alt, and queens? Are queens more likely to be cis? P.S. Hey Julez / UCC can represent. So I do want to say, I don't think the majority of queens personally are cis gay men. I think that I will never erase the lovely trans sisters, because in the truth of drag, they are the pillars of it. They are the foundation.
In the truth of the queer community overall.
Exactly. It would be completely irresponsible and rude of us to not like shout out and love and support our trans sisters. I think that what I have found is that there can just be, again, like I sort of mentioned in the comment from Luke and me, there can be these internalized things we're going through. And I think that when you're looking at like cis male drag queens, you may be looking at a different experience or a different take on gender than like trans women drag queens or trans femme drag queens. And again, we're all going through our own stuff. You can't, like, it would also be silly to judge a person's behavior based on their gender, but I think it is also kind of understandable why perhaps a cisgender man would not totally understand or comprehend the experiences of people like us as well. But they can. They're perfectly capable of it if they do the reading and they listen and learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo that too, you know, it's important to acknowledge that the alt community isn't just kings and things and clowns. There are alternative queens that face a lot of the difficulties that we do, right? And that's an important piece of this as well. You know, they were talking about pageant drag earlier, and so there's, you know, a sort of unspoken hierarchy that exists, among drag queens, and then among those of us that don't identify as drag queens. There's so many categories, and all the lines are so blurry.
I think that's what can be so like beautiful and important about drag, is that like, just as the queer community is very diverse, and like I've always said that what I love about the queer community is that you can meet any single queer person and they're never going to have the exact same experience with queerness as you. I think that's what's beautiful about drag as well, is that like if a pageant queen is fulfilled and loves being a pageant queen and loves doing it and is respectful to all of their performers, you go, girl. Like, enjoy those pageants, win those pageants, do everything you want, crown after crown, ma'am. I'll build you a display case for them as long as you're like respectful to me. I don't think that any kind of drag should be invalidated or should be treated as better or worse than the other. I think that ultimately what we should be looking at when we're looking at drag performers is their soul, is what they're expressing to us, what the kindness they're expressing to us is. Because I've met plenty of like traditional classic drag queens who are just the loveliest people on earth to me, and are just the loveliest people on earth in general. And I would never reject their drag for being different than mine. I would simply say, you're a nice person, you're a lovely person, and you do different drag. And I love to watch you perform. Do those splits, do those death drops, girl. I love you. Do we have any other thoughts? Ooh, it looks like we're running a little over time, but
There's a question.
what? Oh yes, hi Facebook user. I want to answer that. I want this question to be answered, and I would love for Julez to talk about it. I believe, as a minister myself, what can clergy do to support the drag community? Ooh, the hair flip, you got excited.
This question does make me really excited, and it's a question I have quite often. I think first and foremost, connect with your community. A huge part of, you know, as a Christian, a huge part of what we do is about community, right? It's about being in relationship with one another. And if we're, you know, also listening to our Indigenous communities, it's about being in right relations with each other. And that's a really important piece of this, you know, as a minister, as clergy, as a priest, as, you know, whoever you are, connect with the community and see what they need. You know, as soon to be, hopefully, clergy in Toronto, what the queer community in Toronto needs, what drag artists in Toronto need, is going to be different than, say, what drag artists here in Chicago need, what drag artists in small town Indiana, Ohio, where a lot of your family
Not
They get confused all the time. It's same thing.
you know, there's a lot of places in BC that are very different. In Canada, I'm thinking of BC. And so it's really about connections, and it's about making your intentions clear, you know, and acknowledging the history, acknowledging the trauma that may be there, and understanding that there's going to be people that won't want to talk to you. and that won't want to engage with you as a religious person, as a Christian, especially also if you're white, there's a lot of trauma and there's a lot of pain. And being able to understand that and accept that and work to reconcile and connect and be in community is how we can go about that.
I also do want to say I don't seem to have my summit schedule with me on stage right now. I apologize, but there is going to, I believe, be a lovely keynote later in the summit about like queerness and Islam. Yes, Bonnie looks like she's nodding, so I said that correctly.
Sunday, I believe.
Sunday, yes. I would love for you guys to check out that. I think that what is also important about drag is accepting it in all cultures and in all religions. My fiance lives in Malaysia currently and was raised in Islam, and like there's a drag bar in Malaysia that you can like go to and hang out at, and people love it. And I think that it's really important to discuss and include all religions in this and make sure that everywhere we go, every space we're in, we're supporting the people around us, and we're supporting especially the people who might be struggling with the space they're in. I know, like, I stopped going to church for a period of time because after I transitioned, it became very weird for people who saw me when I was like a baby to be now looking at me as like this man with like the prepubescent 12-year-old boy voice and all that stuff. They were like, who's this little guy? Tammy and Paul, have you been hiding a son from us? Where did this come from? But I think that like over time I ended up returning to it, and I ended up coming back to sort of that space, because when you come around and you find how to accept people, even in spaces that can be difficult or stressful, it can be really awesome. Like it can turn out really awesome. And I'm really glad people like Julez exist. I'm very glad that our Facebook user who wants to know more about including people exist. I'm very glad other people who are in other religions are like supporting and uplifting queerness. I'm glad they exist. And I'm glad all of you exist and are here with me today. Yes, give yourself a little round of applause. Today you have supported alternative drag, and that's a very important thing that means a lot to us. I'm sorry for checking the time again. Yes. Real quick before we close out, I do want to give a big thanks to Bonnie Violet for doing this whole thing, for putting this together. She really she outsold. And it really means a lot that you were willing to include this panel. I know that I know that it wasn't like exclusively spirituality related, but it meant a lot to me to be able to talk about this and be able to discuss this with you guys. I also want to thank, again, Ani, our beautiful, beautiful ASL interpreter. It means a lot that we're able to contribute to communities that may have a little bit of a harder time being able to be incorporated into these events. It's lovely, 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 very exciting. I want to thank the lovely King Julez for being here with your little puffballs and your beautiful, beautiful harness and your beautiful, beautiful shoes. I want to thank the lovely Firestorm for being here with your beautiful, beautiful jacket and your beautiful, beautiful shoes and just your beautiful, beautiful selves.
And a huge thank you to you for your beautiful, beautiful everything. Thank you for hosting and moderating this.
Especially if nobody can see the earrings from a distance because they blend into the collar. They're like little red lightning bolts, and like they'll just leave those in my makeup case.
You're gonna steal it backstage real quick.
You're just gonna leave them on my stuff, and I'm gonna accidentally.
You get the earrings, I'll get the collar and the rug.
No, I'm gonna get robbed.
But only good drag gets robbed.
It's sharing. You're contributing to alt drag.
You can share my collar by putting it in the laundry and then giving it back because it is covered in black makeup from my beard. I also want to thank the lovely people who are willing to be interviewed for this. Luke and me, Monsieur Bombastic, Garlic, Frankie404, Yuri Thrall. I also want to thank the lovely Penis Envy who I was supposed to talk to. Yes, anyone who knows Penis Envy gets it. But I want to thank him as well because we were going to chat, but we got distracted at Mayhem last night because it was too fun. And I again want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank our beautiful tech team for setting up the live stream, making sure it's looking cute, making sure we look beautiful and can be shared with the world. And I also want to thank me for being so good at moderating and definitely not good.
That deserves some real claps.
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you. It was so lovely to talk with you guys. Like genuinely, whether I was on a stage with lights on me and a camera on me and all that good stuff, it would be lovely to chat with you guys about these things. I'm just extra glad we got to share it with all these cool and beautiful people. Do you guys have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience? Any special things? Anything? Moderating.
You can go first. I'm still collecting those ideas.
Without being too emotional, just a huge thank you to people that support us and our art, people who share everything that they can and make space and offer, again, what they can. A huge thank you to this conference. It's so exciting for me to be international and sharing my art and meeting people and making friends and seeing people who do art like me and connect to faith or spirituality or something like me and have these conversations. Just be weird. Just keep being weird.
Be weird, everybody. That was one of the things Charlie talked to me a lot about, was like the idea of like, I just want to scare the shit out of people. I just want to do some weird shit and have fun.
I love being confusing.
I love to confuse people. I'm so good at it because I'm also not very good at talking.
See, I like the talking part. It's the listening part that I love to listen until somebody's like, when you were talking about Twink 42, about being like, blah, blah, blah. I love the compliments, but growing up in a family where like, they were like, you cannot have a big head. So like, I get this weird shame when I get compliments. So when somebody's just like going on and on about how much they enjoy me, I just start to get more and more. I'm like, thanks so much. I don't know what to say.
Do you want me to tell you to quit drag without making you feel better? I don't.